So those of you who are just joining us right now, I'd like to welcome you. And if you could maybe put in the chat where you are in the world today. I think that that is something that just always fascinates me to know where people are in the world. And also, what perspective do you bring today? Are you a scholar? Are you a practitioner? Are you an HR? Are you an OD? What perspective do you bring? Hello, Carla. Carla's in Georgia. Enyuman, did I say your name correct? Where are you from, Enyuman?
It's Enyonam.
Okay, Enyunam.
Yes.
And where are you from?
I'm from Ghana. I'm in Ghana.
Awesome.
In Ghana.
You're in the same continent as Graham and Fusina.
Okay.
Awesome. And Savita's in Chicago. Welcome, everybody.
Thank you.
So my name is Kimberly Barker, and I'm the Vice President of the International Society for Organization Development, who is sponsoring this webinar. And I'd also like to thank my hubby, Greg Barker, who helps me with the webinar process. And I want to thank him in advance for always helping me in doing that. And I want to introduce to you Graham Williams. Oh, people are coming in, and I am trying to. Here we go. Sorry, Graham. I want to make sure everybody can get in.
Yeah, just a quick one. I'm excited because I'm a member of ISOD.
ISODC?
Yes.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. That's wonderful. I'm glad you could join. And I met Graham. Graham, how long ago did we meet?
Quite recently, I think.
Yeah. Within the last year for sure. And Graham, he lives in Cape Town, South Africa, which to me is the other paradise. It's just so beautiful there. And his purpose is to facilitate discovery and access healing, wholeness, and resilience by organizations and their members to boost their bottom line. I think that's so incredible when companies take care of their employees, they boost their bottom line, right? Graham has worked in over 40 different countries. Graham's specialties are business strategy, leadership development, business process design, using story to improve creativity and service, enhance the brand, installing a virtuous culture in organizations, the human dynamics of sustainability, facilitating key conversations. Graham is the author of 8 books and an avid reader of psychology, economics, business strategy, consumer behavior, sociology, criminology, and advanced human resources. Graham is a neuro-linguistic practitioner and a certified management consultant and coach. I'd like to welcome you to connect with Graham on LinkedIn and be a part of his community as I have done. And it has been a wonderful, wonderful thing. So I'd like to turn this over to you, Graham.
Gosh, thanks so much, Kim. Lots of big words, but thank you for that.
Yeah.
We're going to be dipping into the past, and there's learning to be had there, but it's also nice just to jump out of where we're at and the present, get into a different place. And in preparing for this, I looked up some notes, and the Sumerians, for example, which is where today's Iraq is, southern Iraq, about 6,000 years ago, produced things like the first fish aquarium, the first animal fables, poems, elegies, the first labor union, schools, pharmacies, library catalogues. They had lots of intergenerational strife and also went through periods of violence and economic and environmental destruction. So they've been there, done that. Lots of the things that we experience. And just earlier this week, I met someone called Irvin Yalom. He's a existential psychiatrist. And he's developed some quite new theories and deals with some of the givens in life. And surprisingly, he draws a lot of his wisdom and learning, not from other psychiatrists or in that field, but from classical Greek philosophers like Epicurus, who lived in the 3rd and 2nd century BC. So there's some wisdom in the past, and maybe today we'll discover some of that. So I want you to look at the picture in front of you and think of the white circle as a coin. And we're going to do this exercise as individuals, just something to think on. And then no feedback, but just as part of your getting into this. So the green on the slide represents the reverse side of the white coin. So we're going to flip the white coin. And the first question is, in what state or what feelings do you have as you come into this meeting? So if you're angry and outraged at what's happening, maybe you can imagine that springs from a perceived injustice or being wronged in some way. And you might decide after a few moments of reflection to channel that into a calm passion for justice. If you're feeling powerless and empty, maybe there's space that can be filled with something new. Maybe there's an opportunity waiting. And that would be wonderful if something cropped up during today. If you're feeling sad, if you're grieving or mourning, we always mourn for that which we love and which we may have lost or has been hurt or harmed. So what might you be prompted to be or to do as a result of that feeling of sadness? And if you're fearful, that disappears when we find the courage to speak out and being able to speak in a place of trust. And in the same way that fear can drive out love, so love can drive out fear. So just have a look at that for a moment. Select the quadrant that you're mainly in at the moment as regards your feelings and consider the flip side. And we'll give you a minute or two for that, and then we come back to it. We can move on, Kimberley.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. There you go.
Okay, so our first topic, and during this hour, we're going to have 3 breakouts, or 3 moments of reflection, and each will cover 1 or 2, maybe 3 topics. So the first topic is something many of us may be familiar with, never enough time, deadlines, busyness, getting frenetic and frazzled, battling to keep up, or to catch up, or to keep pace with things. And for centuries now, time has been an issue for lots of people. So the Sumerians, Egyptians, Chinese, all used instruments for measuring time, thousands of years before BC. The ancient Greeks, the Romans used sundials. The first mechanical clocks were invented in the 15th century. Fob watches came along a century later. Wrist watches in the 19th century. Digital watches in the 20th century. We still chase time. When Gulliver visited Lilliput, the Lilliputians were amazed that he always consulted his watch before doing anything. So they thought, well, that must be his God, because it directs his life. It determines everything that he does, and he never makes a move or does anything without first consulting it. So I think that is somewhat characteristic of our current time. We work in TikTok time, and other notions of time sort of bypass us. So the Romans, about 30 BC, distinguished between nunc fluens, the fleeting moment, and nunc stans, the timeless present. And indigenous North Americans, 20,000 years ago, like the Cherokees, for example, they teach that the future and the past are connected by a visualized bridge. And that applies whenever they have a transition ceremony, or at any time, when they might be afraid of the unknown that lies ahead, or the unexpected that may have happened. The Australian Aboriginal people also go back 50,000 years. Their history begins with dream time, and dream time is still here. And it was a period long before time began, but it's still with us. They have no word for future, and they have no word for past. And in South Africa, we have the Khoisan culture, or Bushmen, nomadic first people who were here. And they say, the past is in front of me because I can see it. The future is behind me because I cannot see it. And so what I do is walk backwards through my life. So just we'll have a moment to think about how time chases you and how you handle the urgent or the serious or whatever. And a lot of things that people seem to be troubled by nowadays are fear of missing out. So it's the latest piece of news, or it's the latest publication, or it's the latest thing that other people are doing in their businesses. And this fear of missing out causes quite a bit of stress. And I came across someone who said they have now switched to the joy of missing out. So they've stopped chasing being agile, and they've stopped trying to be in control, and they've stopped trying to be too digitally savvy, and they've stopped chasing after every single deadline or catch-up opportunity, and take great joy in that, and find that as they've shifted from fear of missing out, the fear to joy of missing out, they're far more relaxed and they get just as much done. So just hold on to that. Mm-hmm.
So from FOMO to JOMO, right?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So just take away the fear and insert joy. So that's TikTok time. We can move on to the next slide.
All right.
Which is related to time because the world has speeded up, and it's probably going to speed up more as we get into the fourth industrial revolution, 5G networks and artificial intelligence and robotics and big data and all of that stuff. And people talk about singularity as the point where artificial intelligence surpasses that of human intelligence, and we become transhuman. And it's like one of those science fiction things. We think it's far off. Maybe it isn't. I don't know. So I like what John Naisbitt said about the most exciting breakthroughs of the 21st century will not occur because of technology, but because of our expanding concept of what it means to be human. And there may be a case for looking at technology and the extent to which it leads us. When technology happens, we react and we catch up. And maybe we must revert to not so long ago when technology was an enabler. And maybe we should rein it in and restrain it at times when it's going to threaten humanity in terms of unemployment or that sort of thing, and just slow the progress. And I think we must certainly guide and steer the ethics of technological development. Just about everything can be militarized. Everything can be used to good purpose or to bad purpose. So a drone can shoot bullets or it can shoot seedlings into the earth. How we use it, I think, demands an exercise of wisdom and ethics that should come from the citizenry and from business, and not from those in power who control the technology and sometimes control us. So that's a thought. Time, technology. We can go into the first breakout just to think on that for a minute or two. How do deadlines affect you? How strong is your push for agility? Can you see a case for getting a better handle on and managing technology better? Do you find time to pause? Where are you at? How do you feel about that? And maybe just think about that or discuss it for a minute or two in your breakout.
Okay, we will we'll have about 8 people in a breakout room, and we'll go ahead and do that. How about 2 minutes? How does that sound? And you just have to accept that you're going to go into the breakout room, and then we can have conversations about these things. We are all back together again.
Okay, so if anyone or any of the breakout groups would like to share something or perhaps pose a question, now would be a good time before we move on to the next topic.
We had a good question just come up just at the end of our breakout, and one of the questions was, has technology actually hurt some of our time management? And we were about to discuss it, and then it ended our group. But I think it was a great question. Has technology actually done a little bit more harm in some of our time management.
Yes, yes, yes. It's such a big subject. I think that time management is always also energy management and self-management, stuff like procrastination and so on. And yeah, I think the recent chase towards agility and using time better has backfired on some people. There have been cases of people getting fatigued because of this constant, especially when agility is seen as synonymous with speed. So I think it can have adverse effects. The trouble with these things is that they only get researched after the event. It's the same as the COVID thing and COVID fatigue and the psychological impact. We don't know yet, but we're suspecting that it's bigger than we think. And the same with technology that's used to make us too efficient. That's an opinion. Yeah.
I'll go ahead and share my screen again. And some folks have said that we didn't give them enough time. So we'll try to we'll add another minute to it. So you'll have 3 minutes to discuss next time, okay? Am I on the right slide?
Yes, you are.
Okay, good.
So we're going to move on to disappearing compassion. There have been more and more cases of researches being done that show that alongside of the development of narcissism and me first and me only, there's less empathy, less concern for others. More and more cases being reported of what people call the bystander effect, where people don't get involved because there's going to be too much bureaucracy or trouble, or whatever. So they step aside to cross to the other side of the road. More and more separation and polarization in our world. And the reverse of that, obviously, is less compassion. So I think humanity has a long journey still to travel from being combative to being competitive to becoming collaborative and compassionate. 2,500 years ago, Lao Tzu, Chinese philosopher, taught that leaders whose position will endure are those who are the most compassionate. Compassion is a mysterious intellectual force that allows reality to act on the mind in a deeply affecting way, and in turn, the mind may act upon reality. And Dasha Kiltner, psychologist, has done quite a bit of research showing how compassion evokes influence. So one can be a compassionate boss who also insists on results. They're not mutually exclusive. And one of my favorite mystic poets, Rumi, about 800 years ago, said, the very center of your heart is where life begins. And that's the most beautiful place on earth. So,
Graham, instead of doing a breakout, maybe we could just have a share time of how you have experienced some compassion these days, or how you are sharing some additional compassion, or how you've observed people showing additional compassion. What do you
Okay.
think?
Do you want me to try and answer that now?
Yeah, would that be okay?
Yeah, I think so. I'm not
Okay.
sure if the answer will be. I've noticed that with unsocial distancing and wearing of masks, and perhaps for good reason, the lack of touch, the lack of closeness has had an impact on people, certainly in my part of the world. And I think compassion is one of those things where you have to lean into the other person, connect. Touch is important because we show it not only by our words, but also our actions. And it's one of those basic human needs that, you know, it's top of the list, in fact, of as people actualize. If you read Ken Wilber, arriving at a place where one can be compassionate to self and to others, that's a human growth point. And there's some fear that that's disappearing as we get more bounded, more separated, more narcissistic.
And I love what you say about showing compassion to yourself, because I think for the most part, people don't show enough compassion to themselves. And you have to do that. You have to show it to yourself, I think, before you can share it with others. Would you agree?
Absolutely. In fact, I think it's good to start thinking of compassion as a collective, not one superior individual helping an inferior or needy individual, but it's adult to adult, a collective thing that happens where both benefit.
So where we're staying right now, there's a church located by us, and on last Saturday there were lines. They were doing a food drive, and it was just crazy how long the lines were. And I asked somebody who was participating in the food drive, I said, you know, did you coordinate with the state or something like that? And they said eventually they did, but initially they just took money and they went out and bought food and created bags, and people were just coming through and getting it. And I was just so impressed that, you know, they didn't wait for the bureaucracy, if you will, you know, to kick in. I mean, they just started doing good immediately because they saw a need. And I just thought that was so cool.
Absolutely. There's an English psychologist, Paul Gilbert, and he's studied compassion and mindfulness-based compassion. And he says, as we've evolved as humans, we've learned to do things beyond what animals can do. So we can look back and have regrets and resentment, or we can look forward and have anticipation and anxiety. And as we've developed this capacity to imagine and to reflect, so we've developed new brain troubles. So we're anxious or we regret. And the antidote to that, in terms of what he's been doing in his research, is mindfulness, but also compassion. So if you're feeling sorry for yourself, go and help someone else. If you're feeling broke, give something away. If you need compassion, go and give some away. And I think there's something in that.
Does anyone else have a story of compassion that you've seen recently?
Well, I'll share a bit of compassion that I showed myself in service of others. I'm an extreme extrovert. These lockdowns are challenging for me, like everybody else. And so I took that as an opportunity to go volunteer at a food bank, Kim, along with your story, where I do very physical, heavy work to prepare the food bank for giving out food for others to help them with their food insecurity. And that first and foremost was a compassionate act to myself to be with others, because I wasn't, because the lockdown and I don't know, food banks got some kind of pass to be able to be with strangers. And really what it was to serve so many other people. But that's not how it started. So it's kind of a combination of compassion for, like I said, myself and others.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you, Wendy.
It is wonderful, yeah. And it's something that spreads, isn't it? Compassion begets more compassion. Story, conversation, I think it goes alongside of compassion. And story has been with us for the last 150,000 years at least, to communicate, to make sense of things, to aid memory, to archive human history, and that sort of stuff. Parables were used to spread early Christianity, fables, fairy tales, anecdotes, adventure stories to further and spread Buddhism. So we've moved in our storytelling from dance in ancient times, ceremonies, symbols, sign language, the spoken word, social art in cave paintings, the telling of metaphorical stories, the first legends and myths, to a quite sophisticated oral tradition, fairy tales, fables, to troubadours with their lyrical poetry and songs, traveling storytellers, print, the written word, recorded stories and photographs, TV, the internet, virtual reality and self-determined stories. And we sort of return to the beginning in a way. We're coming back to visual storytelling, which is where we started out so many years ago. And the trouble with the digital world is that it's fertile ground for a virus-like spread of story, true and false, including propaganda and rumor and gossip and innuendo and that sort of stuff, without even getting into algorithm use. Okay. So, and story circles have been around for ages. King Arthur's Knights of the Round Table, Shaka Zulu, his MPs, conversation circles for his warriors, the Sufi Sobet Sacred Circle, First Nation powwows, talking sticks, World Cafe table conversations. It seems to me that if we can win back the art of conversation and sharing, as opposed to confronting and arguing, and get beyond that, and I'm not even talking about debate here, but dialogue where people can build bridges through. I think it's a case of doing your homework on yourself, understanding what the other person's viewpoint is, engaging in a non-violent way, listening more than talking, asking questions out of curiosity and genuine interest, and not talking about issues, but maybe needs and requests. and allowing for an exchange where something of the mysterious can enter in. Dan Siegel talks about the mind. He defines it as not individual, but as a collective or shared mind. So when two people talk, there's an evolving of understanding of information and knowledge, which is exchanged between two minds on a basis where both people can change. And I think there's something wonderful in that. Yeah.
Donovan says Aristotle's hierarchy of the 5 elements of narrative: plot, theme, character, dialogue, and spectacle. Would you like to say a little bit more about that, Donovan?
Yeah, I think this section of the book, as I was kind of reviewing it, gets me excited when it comes to narrative, because it's something in my life that I'm going through right now, trying to figure out how to kind of tell more impactful stories, more connectable stories, whether it's my own or whether it's what I'm going through. And what's cool about Aristotle is how he talks about that hierarchy of plot, theme, character, dialogue, and spectacle. And if you go through stories of people saying stuff or movies or books or whatever, you can find all those elements. But the modern day approach to narrative actually adjusts it based on what Graham just said about, you got to figure out what people's perspectives are. Some people may like the character building more than they like the theme or the plot. So if you can connect your narrative in one of those 5 elements and break up that hierarchy, you can actually impact your business, your communities in a more impactful way. So I love this section of the webinar today when it comes to narrative, because it's so rich and so impactful, because people live for stories.
Well, that's wonderful what you just said, Donovan. I think one of the other things that I quite like about, there are all sorts of theories about story patterns. So Joseph Campbell and his hero's journey, there are about 14 steps, okay? And it can get quite complicated, but effectively, I think there are 4. And it's the 4 W's, which is the pattern of nearly every story, whether it's mythology or James Bond or movie or whatever, or personal story, where we start in the womb, Garden of Eden, everything's fine. Then comes a wounding, something happens. There's a disruption, a separation, a hurt. And that means that we go into wandering with an A. There's lots of work to be done, and initiation and trials and tribulations and trouble and discovery and adventure, until eventually we arrive at a place of wonder with an O, which is not quite the same as the womb, but it's more like a spiral. So that can be the new womb, if you like.
Yeah, and the cool thing about your W, timeline there is, in what you started our conversation today was we're walking into the future backwards. So some people, we start with wonder, or in stories we start with wonder, and then we go backwards to the womb to see how we got to that wonder piece, which is so cool, because people start in the womb and that's exciting, or people start with the wonder and that's exciting too for them.
Yes, I like that. And if in a business communication, you can talk about wonder as the vision or the picture of where you'd like to be. You can think of the wound as the problem, something we have to handle, and then the wandering around can be who's going to play what part in doing what when, so that we can bridge the gap between the vision and the problem. So even that's a story format, if you like.
So Graham, I just want to be mindful of time. We have about 15 minutes left. So I just want to make sure we cover everything that we want to. So
Yes, yes. Donovan, we must connect at some point. Talk some more.
Let's do it. I'm excited. Absolutely.
Right. So we were going to have a breakout discussion on compassion and bridging story. I think we should still do that and allow 3 minutes. What do you think?
do we have time? What do you think? Let's do it.
Yeah.
Or let's vote. How many of you would like to do the breakout? Hold up your hand if you want to.
I love the breakout.
Okay, we'll do. Well, whoever said
I love
that.
the
Okay. Okay, so you have to accept it. When I put you in a breakout room, you have to accept the breakout. And unfortunately, it'll be 3 minutes, okay? So here we go. So as we all come back now together, I just want to say, I know we're kind of in a time crunch, so but I have been consistently reminded lately of how important storytelling is in organizations. Even from a customer service standpoint, sharing with the employees good stories, reinforcing the way things should happen can be a really powerful tool for management. So, but let me go back and share the screen, and there you go.
So we've got 3 more topics, and I'm going to rush through them rather quickly, and we'll have another breakout and try and leave as much time as we can at the end for feedback or questions. Okay, so the first one is counterintuitive leadership, and I'm going to cut that very short by saying that I was going to tell you a story about Hannibal, who 2 millenniums ago, that's around about 220 BC, crossed the Alps with, I think, 14 elephants and his army, and they entered Rome on the other side. He came from Carthage and wreaked lots of havoc and won the Second Punic War. And if you analyze his leadership qualities, and they were a little more gory in those days than we are these days, I think. They killed people. We just cause collateral damage, okay? His qualities were to do with the head in terms of strategy and thinking on his feet and so on, and his hands, invoking followership and being hands-on or hands-off as needed, but mainly heart. Those heart competencies, his social intelligence, his knowing where the power was in groups, his empathizing with his men, going without meals, deeply listening to them and his advisors, respecting different viewpoints. He commanded attention when required. He forged alliances. He was very values driven and was quite a model for civility and respect and empathy. I love thinking of the word respect, just to go off on a tangent, as from re and spect. So re is again, repeat, and spect from spectacles, if you like, means look again. So respecting someone else is looking again at them and again, and not making that judgment too soon, but seeing them with different eyes, and the potential that might lie within, or the wounded inner child that might lie within. So respect is such a great thing to develop these days. But moving on, we spend too much time, I think, these days in rushing around, looking at strategy and organization, competence, productivity, engagement, remote working performance, risk management, all of that stuff. And out there, there are so many hurt, wounded, traumatized, fatigued people. That's where leaders must put their focus if they're going to succeed. And both, either or, non-dualistic thinking, especially in an argumentative world, we take, things are black or white. It's this way or that way. But the ancient Chinese symbol yin and yang, male and female, both. The Chinese character for crisis, I think a lot of people know, is consists of two characters, disaster and opportunity. So there's also something called Gurdjieff's law of three, which is where two opposites meet, sometimes a third emerges. So if you think of Jesus' parable of a seed, which is one force falling to the ground, an opposing force, then a third thing enters, which is soil and water, and that results in a plant. And so there's power in putting things together and thinking and both, instead of the way we normally think it's either or. We've got this Western deductive, inductive, this or that, and we make our decisions on that basis. Oftentimes, and both is a better way to go. So it means developing a bigger mind, a metanoic mind, a more beautiful mind, a eunoic mind, and allowing for this non-dualistic way of thinking. Okay, moving on. Diversity, a pipe dream. So much conflict. In the 13th century, Rumi again told the story of an elephant and 6 blind men. And they went around the elephant, and one felt a trunk and thought it was a rope, another felt a tail and thought it might be a snake. And they all had different perspectives or different views, or a single part of the whole. I think diversity is like that, where there's a richness in togetherness that we miss. So André Laurent, a French, he worked at INSEAD for a long time. His research showed that the most diverse organizations are the worst performing, and the most diverse organizations are the best performing. And where there's most conformity in the middle, you get sort of average performance. And the difference between the best and the worst is that the worst concentrate on difference and it unsettles them, and the best harness the richness of difference in their decision-making, their inclusion, their movement from diversity to equity to belonging to loving, and they perform brilliantly. So it's about time we got hold of this diversity thing and really cracked it. Back to story, Clarissa Pinkola Estes talks about the ugly duckling story as a psychological and spiritual root story. We all need so much to find ourselves and to belong, and we deny each other that basic human right and privilege. So getting into interconnectivity and interdependence and realizing that diversity trumps separation and distance is the way to go, I think. So we have time now, I think, for a third breakout. We're going to look at counterintuitive leadership focused on people, thinking non-dualistically and both instead of either or, and moving from diversity right through to belonging. And if you could just talk about that and see if anything strikes you, something to reflect on after this webinar is over.
Okay, 3 minutes, guys, okay?
Here they come.
So as we're all coming back together, thank you to those who could stay over a little bit. Some folks have apologized, you know, that they had to leave right at 1. But they also said this was exactly what they needed today. And that really warmed my heart. So does anybody have anything to share from the breakout room? Any ahas, anything?
We had a question about the and both versus the either /one. Can you dive a little deeper into that?
Yeah, sorry, I missed the question, Donovan. I think you muted.
Yeah, you just went out, Donovan.
My bad, sorry.
Oh, that's all right.
Can you dive deeper into the yin and yang concept and the need for the and both rather than the either or one?
Okay. As I understand it, very simply, if there's a way of doing it, A, and another way of doing it, B, that can become a confrontation, a clash, a need for choosing one and discarding the other. But if people talk, whether it's about a viewpoint or a choice or whatever it is, very often something comes out of that, which is neither that nor this, but a different way forward. And it happens frequently once people get into the habit of, again, not rushing, but talking through things gently and considering both sides. And it relates to diversity, I think, where people have different ways of seeing the same thing and coming up with something that enables both parties to move forward.
And Graham, you said something about that really resonated with me about it's not just about diversity, it's about moving into the space of inclusion. And sometimes I think we focus too much on diversity. And I heard the saying once, diversity is being invited to the dance, but inclusion is being asked to dance. And I love that because I think inclusion is just really taking it a step further. I have a former coworker who told this story, which really kind of sticks in my head about the and is she had 2 daughters in college and 1 orange in the fruit bowl. And they both rushed in the room and they both put their hands on the orange. And they both wanted it. Well, it just took a minute of her asking questions. One had just worked out and she wanted the orange for sustenance, you know, she wanted to eat it. And the other one was creating a recipe and she needed the rind for a recipe that she was doing. So instead of thinking that there would be 1 winner and 1 loser, she asked questions and she could create an and situation. And I just, to me, that really just kind of puts it together. So.
Yes, I mean, high tech and high touch is another favorite of mine. and the more high tech we have, better believe that the more is the need for high touch.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
And
I just,
we can have both.
yep. So I just want, I can't thank you enough. John said, I thought today's session was a great help, especially for these times we find ourselves in. I do believe sometimes you need to slow down a little bit to go even faster, right? And I think this was exactly what I needed today as well. So I want to thank you, Graham, so much for your time. I want to, I have to tout ISODC. If you're interested in becoming part of an organization of people committed to doing good in the world, go to isodc.org and there's more information about the organization. I also want to talk about a program that I teach in at Eastern Michigan University. We have a Master's of Science in HROD, and due to COVID, they're waiving the GRE GMAT scores. So if you're interested in going back to school, this is, this is a great, great program. And we have to look at the silver linings, right? We have to look at what good can come out of this horrible time that we have. And I think a waiving of the GRE GMAT score is definitely a good thing. Here's a couple of LinkedIn groups that we'd like to direct you to be a part of. And let's see what else. Oh, we have another webinar coming up on January 21st, and it is with Dr. Roland Livingston, and it is about future of jobs in OD&C. So you'll definitely, I'll send that out when I send the replay, if for those of you who might want to sign up. And Graham, I just can't thank you enough for being with us. Let me put your email up here for those of you who want to contact Graham or myself. I will send Graham's website out so you can look at and access his 8 publications or have access to them. The website it's called haloandnoose.com. So HALOANDNOOSE.com. And so also I'll send the link out to this wonderful, wonderful book, Ancient Wisdom for Modern Workplaces. So before we go, is there any parting words you want to share with us, Graham?
I just want to apologize for rushing through too much in too little time. So we sort of bombarded and maybe stressed you with too much information. My wish is that you just relax, take whatever happened to reach you, and the book that we're talking about is free, and you can catch up by looking at the book. All of the topics we covered today are included in the little booklet.
And Faustina, you have your hand up. Do you have a question that you want to ask?
I have a question. We're discussing the diversity and type of dream, looking at inclusion. But most of the time you realize that in the public service, because of bureaucracy and levels of hierarchy in doing your work, sometimes you find yourself at the advantage point and you want to see how you can make yourself inclusive, especially if you have a boss who do not believe in the inclusive process. How do the individual try to strive for that inclusiveness?
Yeah, I agree with you. It is a challenge. I was just in a work meeting just before this call, and we were setting up a new committee, and they started to set up the hierarchy, and all that. And we designated a committee lead, And then someone stopped us and they said, you know what? Let's make this be a collaborative effort. Let's not, you know, develop the whole hierarchy. You know, let's kind of have the one person who's going to keep us on track, but that the rest will just work together to accomplish the task. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so wonderful. You know, we don't have to have 10 layers of, you know, bureaucracy to get something done. And so I think, you know, I think it's about making those decisions or making those suggestions that allow people to work together better. And I think with each suggestion, you can maybe help change their mind a little bit. What do you think, Graham?
I think there's so much to it. It deserves a much wider and deeper discussion. But
Yeah.
two little things for now. Listening to the other person far trumps talking. And all of us we're not single stories. Each of us has many stories.
Yeah.
So asking the okay, tell me about, and finding out different aspects of the person opposite you isn't female or black or transgender or rich or poor, whatever. That person's many aspects. And by finding out beyond the obvious and the visible, just a question of listening and asking out of genuine interest and curiosity. That goes a long way to being able to then talk about other things.
I really love what Donovan said. Donovan said, attempt to enroll your boss into your vision through questions, insights, and storytelling. I really love that, Donovan. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. I will send out a replay of this webinar. We had folks from all over the US, Europe, Africa. This was just really a really rich exchange, I felt. And I just want to ask you all, the minute this webinar is over, pick up the phone and call someone who would like to hear from you today. It will make both you feel better as well as them. Bye, guys.
Thank you, Kimberly.
Thanks, everybody. I appreciate it.
Bye-bye.